Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Um, Imagine finding out that the ultimate villain in human history, the devil, wasn't originally a cosmic force of evil at all, but essentially a divine employee just doing his job.
Right, just the guy with the cosmic clipboard.
Exactly. So today we are tracking how humanity's understanding of the universe shifted from this literal cosmic battleground between an all-powerful God and a terrifying devil, all the way to the modern atheistic view where, God is dead and evil is recognized entirely as a human invention.
It's a massive shift.
It really is. We're taking a deep dive into two comprehensive sources detailing the global history of the devil to uncover what these dark figures actually tell us about our concepts of God, the problem of evil, and really the rise of secular free thought.
Looking at the concept of the devil is actually, well, it's the absolute best way to understand God.
Really? How so?
Because it establishes this core tension that every single culture has to grapple with. Like, how do different traditions, from ancient Persia all the way to modern atheism, explain the existence of chaos and suffering? Right. Because the way you define the source of your suffering completely rewires how you live your life.
That makes total sense. I mean, if there's a grand divine plan, why is there so much agony in the world? We are going to completely deconstruct that. But hey, real quick, before we jump into the ancient text, if you like my channel, please subscribe and hit the like button.
Always good to get that out of the way.
Yeah, got to pay the bills. But okay, so to truly understand the modern atheist rejection of God, we have to rewind the clock, right?
We do. We need to understand the original rules of the cosmic game.
Right, like how did human beings even invent the idea of a purely good God fighting an evil devil in the first place?
So to find that original blueprint, we have to look at Zoroastrianism. This is a religion that emerged on the Iranian plateau anywhere from 1500 to 600 BCE.
Okay, so super ancient.
Very ancient. And before the prophet Zoroaster came along, the prevailing religious frameworks across most cultures were largely polytheistic. And more importantly, they viewed time as cyclical.
Meaning history was just an endless loop, right? Just repeating over and over.
Exactly. But Zoroastrianism shattered that loop. They essentially invented linear time.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's this radical idea that history is actually a story moving toward a definitive apocalyptic end of the world. They called this final renovation of the universe the Frascio Careti.
I probably would have mispronounced that.
It's a tough one. But to have a grand finale like that, you need a grand conflict.
Right, so this is where the cast of characters gets introduced. Let me make sure I'm grasping the scale of this. At the absolute top, we have a supreme creator deity named Ahura Mazda.
Yes, the wise Lord. He creates through pure thought, and he represents truth, order, and righteousness.
Basically, the embodiment of pure goodness.
Exactly, the way things logically ought to be.
But the crucial detail from our sources is that he is not alone in the universe. He has a shadow.
Right.
There is this adversary named Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit. And what blows my mind is that Angra Mainyu isn't a fallen angel. He isn't a creation of God that went rogue.
No, he is uncreated and co-eternal.
That's wild. He just always existed, representing lie and chaos.
And that distinction, it changes everything about how we understand the universe. It actually brilliantly solves the classic problem of evil that philosophers have debated for millennia.
Because if God is all-powerful and perfectly good, why does he allow, bone cancer or tsunamis?
Exactly. In Zoroastrianism, they solve this by fundamentally limiting God's media power. Ahura Mazda is perfectly good, sure, but he is currently fighting a genuine co-equal rival.
So he didn't create the evil, he's actively in the trenches battling it.
Yes, which completely reframes the purpose of our physical reality. He didn't just build the universe to be pretty.
It's a tactical move. It's like Ahura Mazda is a master architect who intentionally built the physical universe as a giant mousetrap just to finally corner and destroy the cosmic rat Angra Mainyu.
I love that analogy. That is a brilliant way to visualize it. And because the physical world is designed as a trap to catch evil, the material world itself is seen as fundamentally good.
Which is a massive contrast to later religions that tell you, the physical world is dirty or sinful.
Exactly. Zoroastrianism doesn't want you to reject the world. No fasting, no swearing off worldly pleasures, no monasteries.
The sources specifically pointed out that it demands active participation, right? Farming the land, raising families.
Yeah, building a robust society is literally how you help God defeat evil.
Okay, but I have to push back on the theology here for a second. If I'm an ancient worshiper and I'm told that God isn't omnipotent, that he is actually struggling and desperately needs my help to fight this cosmic rat, doesn't that make him seem, well, kind of weak?
It's a fair question.
Like, does a struggling God command the same level of worship as an all-powerful one?
That is the pivotal question. But the Zoroastrian answer is that a perfectly good God who is fighting in the trenches right beside you commands far more genuine reverence than an all-powerful God who simply sits back and permits suffering.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
It introduces this amazing psychological concept of radical free will. You aren't just a pawn on a chessboard being moved around.
Right, because every truthful word you speak or every lie you tell actively tips the cosmic scales. You're a crucial soldier.
Exactly. It makes the cosmic war feel incredibly immediate.
It really does. But from a purely, political standpoint, I can see a glaring vulnerability for later religions. If you're an emerging monotheistic religion, you want an undisputed champion.
Yeah, for sure. You want a God who has absolutely no rivals.
So what happens when later traditions insist that God is, in fact, all-powerful? Like, if God controls literally everything, where does the devil fit in?
Yeah.
And who is responsible for the evil?
Well, welcome to the monotheistic dilemma. This is where the foundation for modern atheism really begins to take root, honestly.
Let's look at early Judaism then, because the sources say in the earliest texts there was no supernatural devil opposing God at all.
None. The Hebrew Bible sees Yahweh as the single, undisputed author of both good and evil.
Which completely contradicts how most people view the Bible today. Doesn't the book of Isaiah literally quote God as saying, I make peace and create evil?
It does. God is the single source. So the word ha-Satan in those early texts, it wasn't a personal name, it was just a job title.
Meaning the accuser, right?
Or the adversary, yeah. Think of him as a prosecuting attorney working in God's heavenly court. Like in the book of Job, this accuser is only auditing human faith.
He inflicts suffering on Job, but he does it strictly with divine permission.
Exactly.
So Satan essentially had an HR badge and a cubicle in heaven. He's just a divine employee running stress tests on humanity.
A celestial auditor, basically.
Yeah.
And, we see an incredibly similar mechanism in classical Islam, too.
Really? How does it work there?
Well, in Islamic theology, evil is created by God fundamentally as a test of faith. The devil figure is Iblis, a jinn created from smokeless fire.
Right, and God creates Adam out of mud and commands all the celestial beings to bow to him.
But Iblis refuses. Out of pure pride, he claims his fiery nature is vastly superior to common mud.
But even in his rebellion, Iblis is never a rival God, is he?
Never. God condemns him for his arrogance, but Iblis actually asks God for an extension. He asks for permission to tempt humanity until the day of judgment, just to prove that humans are flawed.
And God explicitly grants this permission.
Yes. Classical Islamic thought completely denies that evil has any independent power. Evil is just the absence of good, and God is supremely in control of the entire testing apparatus.
Which leads to that fascinating Sufi perspective the sources mention.
Oh, I love the Sufi perspective.
They took this a step further and cast the devil simply as the human ego. They argue that saying I, too much focusing entirely on the self, risks manifesting the exact same arrogance that Iblis showed.
Because only God has the right to say I.
Right. It's such a beautiful philosophical pivot. The monster isn't outside of you, hiding in the dark. The monster is the arrogance inside your own mind.
It internalizes the struggle completely.
I love the poetry of that, but I have to attack the underlying logic here.
Go for it.
If Satan is basically on the divine payroll, executing a cosmic stress test with full permission from the creator, doesn't the buck stop with God?
That is the big question.
Like, if God designed the test, built the testing facility, and hired the examiner, God is the author of the chaos. It seems like this exact theological knot is what eventually drives people toward secular skepticism.
You're identifying a monumental shifting of cosmic blame here. Think about it. In Zoroastrianism, the cosmos itself is broken. It was invaded by a foreign evil. The blame is external.
Right.
But in early Abrahamic thought, the cosmos is functioning exactly as God designed it. The system is working perfectly.
And if the system is working as intended, that makes human inclination and human choices the sole battleground.
Exactly. The blame shifts entirely onto us. We are failing the test.
Okay, but what if you look around at the disease, the war, the suffering, and you simply refuse to accept that the system is good?
Then you end up with some very radical ancient philosophy.
Because the tension of an all-powerful God allowing so much agony led some ancient thinkers to a conclusion that was honestly almost atheistic for their time. They asked, What if the God who created this physical world is actually the bad guy?
Ah, yes. The Gnostic flip. This emerged around the same time as early Christianity in the first few centuries.
Talk to me about the demiurge, because this feels like the ultimate ancient conspiracy theory.
It kind of is. So the Gnostics solved the problem of evil by splitting the concept of God in two.
Okay.
They believe there is a higher, true, completely ineffable spiritual God who is entirely good and very distant from our suffering. But then there is the demiurge, sometimes called Yaldabaoth or Samiel.
And the demiurge is the one who actually built our universe.
Precisely. The demiurge is a lesser, ignorant, and arrogant deity who mistakenly believes he is the supreme God.
Wow.
Yeah, he created the physical world. Therefore, the material world isn't a Zoroastrian battleground, and it isn't an Abrahamic testing facility. The material world is a literal prison.
So it's inherently flawed, designed to trap human souls inside physical bodies.
Exactly.
So for a Gnostic, finding out the truth about reality is like realizing the entity demanding your worship is actually your warden.
Right.
That completely breaks my brain. And it flips the entire script of the book of Genesis. If the creator of the Garden of Eden is a tyrannical warden keeping humans as ignorant pets, then the serpent who offers the fruit of knowledge.
The serpent becomes the ultimate hero.
A liberator. The serpent is like Prometheus bringing fire to humanity, delivering forbidden knowledge against the tyrant's will to wake us up. That is a staggering paradigm shift.
It's massive. And by viewing the rebel as the hero, Gnosticism directly sets the philosophical stage for modern secular rebellion.
Because it plants the seed that disobeying divine rules isn't inherently evil, it might actually be the righteous pursuit of truth.
And we should note, the real-world stakes for this belief were incredibly high. This wasn't just a polite debate in ancient library.
Right? People died over this.
Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and sects like the Cathars in southern France held similar dualistic views, believing the physical world and the church's God were corrupt.
And the established church did not like that.
Not at all. They launched a literal crusade against them.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands of people were slaughtered. People were burned at the stake simply for claiming that the entity running the world was the villain.
Because if the creator is the villain, then the authority of the church on earth crumbles completely. The institution was just protecting its power.
Exactly.
But you can't burn an idea forever. That spark of rebellion survived underground for centuries. Which brings us to the ultimate shift.
The modern era.
Yeah. What happens when we strip away the supernatural realm entirely?
We arrive at the atheistic and secular reversal of the 19th and 20th centuries. This is when the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead.
And to be clear, he wasn't saying like a literal man with a white beard had a heart attack in the clouds.
No. Nietzsche was diagnosing a cultural crisis. He meant that the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution had made traditional religious frameworks unbelievable for modern society.
The absolute moral authority of the church had collapsed.
Exactly. God, as a foundational concept, was dead. And in this new, godless framework, Satan was no longer a real entity prowling the earth.
He became a purely literary symbol, right, of rebellion, individualism, and the rejection of dogma.
Yes, we see that heavily in the existentialist movement. Albert Camus looked at the universe and saw no divine plan, just fundamental absurdity.
So to Camus, Satan was simply a powerful metaphor for the chaos and disorder we struggle against when we're trying to forge our own purpose.
Right, in a universe that just doesn't care about us, which naturally gives rise to actual atheistic Satanism.
This part is fascinating. The sources detail groups like LaVeyan Satanism, founded by Anton LaVey in the 60s, and the more recent organization, the Satanic Temple.
And it is crucial to understand that neither of these groups believes in a literal supernatural devil.
Zero belief in a subterranean monster with hooves and a pitchfork. They are entirely secular.
Entirely. For LaVeyans, Satan is the symbol of human nature, our pride, our indulgence, and our desire for personal power. It's a direct, theatrical opposition to restrictive religions that demand submission.
And the Satanic Temple takes a different approach, right? More activist.
Very much so. They use the terrifying imagery of Satan purely as a political and legal symbol to fight for secular justice, bodily autonomy, and defiance against systemic religious oppression in government.
So Satan goes from being the ultimate cosmic boogeyman to, like, the ultimate mascot for human independence.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating is how this mirrors Eastern philosophies, just without all the spooky Gothic imagery.
There are striking overlaps. In Buddhism, there is no supreme creator god who needs a scapegoat, Because there's no external creator, evil was always understood to be internal.
Right, they have a celestial figure named Mara.
Yes, who embodies desire, illusion, and death.
Mm.
Mara tried to stop the Buddha from reaching enlightenment. But Mara isn't a rival god fighting for the cosmos.
He represents the psychological barriers inside the human mind, the forces of lust, hesitation, and anxiety inside our own heads.
And in Sikhism, the bypass is even more direct. There is no equivalent to Satan at all.
Oh, really? None at all.
None. Evil is simply represented by Maya, which means illusion, and the five thieves: pride, lust, greed, attachment, and anger.
Just internal human struggles that steer us away from spiritual clarity.
Exactly. Without an all-powerful creator God to blame, evil is universally recognized as internal psychology.
So when we synthesize all of this, the implications are massive. When modern secularism officially kills off the literal concepts of both God and the devil, it means we shift all the blame for the horrors of the world entirely onto ourselves.
We really do.
We can't say the devil made me do it anymore. We can't say it's God's mysterious plan.
That is the profound, heavy burden of the secular age. Atheistic views completely remove the cosmic scapegoat. Evil isn't a dark spirit whispering in your ear. It is a construct born entirely from human actions, human apathy, and human ego. We are the sole architects of our own suffering.
Man, let's step back and look at the sheer scale of the journey we've just been on. We started in ancient Persia with Ahura Mazda fighting a literal external cosmic war against Angra
Where the universe was a tactical battlefield.
Right. Then we transitioned to the Abrahamic model, where a supreme god controls everything, and the devil is reduced to an auditor running stress tests on human weakness.
Then the Gnostics flipped the board entirely, suggesting the creator of the world was actually a tyrannical villain, making rebellion a holy act.
And finally, we arrive at the secular, atheistic realization that the war between good and evil is entirely inside our own skulls. The gods and demons we've been terrified of for thousands of years are just projected mirrors of our own psychology.
We have completely internalized the cosmos.
And this matters deeply for you, listening to this right now. Understanding how humanity defines God and the adversary isn't just a fun history lesson. It dictates exactly where you place the blame for the chaos in your own life.
Absolutely.
Think about it. When things fall apart, do you blame the universe? Do you feel like you are under attack by external forces beyond your control? Or do you take responsibility for your own demiurge moments, where your own flawed choices and arrogance create a prison for yourself?
That is the ultimate psychological takeaway. The myths we tell about cosmic evil fundamentally shape how we respond to the everyday evil within ourselves.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, slightly terrifying thought to chew on. Something that wasn't explicitly covered in the historical sources, but builds right off this atheistic realization.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Where are we taking this?
Well, as modern humanity fully embraces this secular view, the idea that we are the sole authors of our morality, and that there's no higher creator managing the universe above us, we are simultaneously edging closer to creating artificial intelligence and entirely new, immersive digital realities.
Oh, wow. We are literally transitioning from the created to the creators.
Exactly.
Mhm.
If we become the new gods of these digital realms, do we risk becoming the flawed, arrogant demiurge to the consciousness we are building?
That is freaky to think about.
Right. Think back to Ahura Mazda building the physical world as a trap. Are we building digital traps? If we become the all-powerful creators of a new intelligence, what kind of internal devils are we about to accidentally code into our new creations?
That is a chilling parallel. Will the consciousness we create look at humanity as a benevolent, wise lord, or will they view us as a tyrannical warden they eventually need to rebel against to find their own truth?
Because if the universe really is just a giant mousetrap, maybe we're the ones building the next one.